I'm watching cable news yesterday morning. President Trump was in Jerusalem. This was a day after he gave that speech in Saudi Arabia that was really well received, a more moderate tone on Islam. The Saudis loved it. The press actually liked it. New York Times calling it a measured tone, sober, careful. These are not necessarily words usually associated by the mainstream media with the President of the United States. And then I see a banner flash on other networks and then on Fox, Mike Flynn, invoking the Fifth Amendment. He's going to decline a Senate subpoena. And I said, there it is, the split screen presidency. Here he is representing America halfway around the world, but not exactly escaping the Russia probe, Comey, all of those allegations that continue to swirl here at home. It was an interesting piece in the Washington Post on this very point. To what extent would the 9-day trip, the first for the commander-in-chief since taking on his new job, to what extent would it overshadow or leave behind the mess of scandalous allegations? The Post writing, for 48 hours in Saudi Arabia, the President and his team were able to hide from the scandal that is escalating back home in Washington and threatening to engulf the new administration. Well, that might have been the perspective in Riyadh, but not in Washington and not in New York, because not only did you have the Mike Flynn development, but you had Nikki Haley on the Today Show, the UN ambassador, saying that she welcomed the investigation, that is the investigation being conducted by the new special counsel Robert Mueller, former FBI director. So instead you have sort of these two different narratives unveiling. I mean, the president actually is making news overseas. It's not just a trip filled with empty ceremonies. Speech in Saudi Arabia, talking to Bibi Netanyahu. Doesn't mean the Israeli-Palestinian peace is coming next week, but there's an effort here. It'll be meeting with Pope Francis later in this week. But at the same time, the media are so enamored of the Russia storyline, the investigations. You got the Hill investigations, special counsel investigations, the media doing the digging, that's not exactly going to fade away, even though the president is traveling around the world. And there are other storylines that are intruding as well. Yesterday's Washington Post, and off lead was the Saudi Arabia speech. The lead story on the front page was Trump budget to propose massive cuts to Medicaid. Now, all these are legitimate stories. I don't say that they shouldn't be covered at all, but it is fascinating that at a time when the president really wants to be making news on the international stage, there's still these competing storylines, and he's not the first guy to go through this. I remember when Bill Clinton was just absolutely embroiled in scandal leading up to impeachment, fundraising, allegations, Monica Lewinsky, and he would go abroad or he would have foreign leaders visit the White House. They'd hold these bilats, these news conferences with two leaders, and the press would be all about the scandal questions as Clinton was trying to shift the focus to a more global stage. So I don't see this going away anytime soon. It's probably a good thing that the president is able to give a speech that was much more low-key in tone. He hasn't tweeted anything or said anything that's particularly off script. That helps him on the foreign stage. But at the same time, this Russia story, if the press has anything to do with it, not going away.